and become the Elden Lord.
Welcome back to Normies Like Us, the podcast that reminds you it's hip to be square. Today, we're about to talk about the cross-platform video game epic in the making. It's an open world of pain and death, because we're talking Elden Ring on Normies Like Us with your hosts, Colin Souls 3.
All right, I'll be up. Mike got the foul omen.
And this is Jacob, the loathsome dung eater. That's a reference. If you played Elden Ring, you know the loathsome dung eater.
Yeah.
Best character in the game.
I'm a big fan of the vulgar militia personally. What a crazy group of guys. But yeah, we're talking Elden Ring. Probably the biggest release of the year up to this point. I'm calling it early game of the year contender. But yeah, the latest in the FromSoftware
game of the year, game of the decade. Who can say?
Who can say? But, right now reviews are good, but we'll jump into all that when we talk kind of our initial reviews. I haven't beaten it yet. Jacob hasn't beaten it yet. Colin's been kind of watching us. But before all that, let's kind of bring us up to speed. We've done one Dark Souls episode way at the beginning of this podcast. It's one of our first episodes ever. And now we're kind of revisiting Hidetaka Miyazaki and FromSoftware. So I want to ask Colin, starting with you, kind of what's your history with FromSoft games? Played Souls, not, where are you coming from with your experience with this developer?
I'm into the Souls games. I like FromSoftware. I think I probably said my history in the Dark Souls episode, but I'd read in a Game Informer, Mike, that Demon Souls was the best game you could buy someone, right? Top rated or whatever. So I got it from my brother for, what was that, PS3?
PS3, 2009, Game of the Year, Demon Souls, yes.
I think he was at college, it was a birthday gift. I don't even think he opened it. And then, it just was not his kind of game. I totally get that in hindsight, not doing more research about it, but it always kind of fascinated me. It was always kind of like my Maltese Falcon, where I was like, what was that game? What is this thing that I'm chasing or whatever? Mm-hmm. And when I finally got Dark Souls 1, and downloaded on my Xbox 360 or whatever, and realized the connection, I just absolutely fell in love. And I really like these series. It was pretty cold on number 3 that you let me borrow, Mike, because I kind of found that game to be too easy. Bloodborne is very challenging, but again, kind of it didn't hit that spot for me what I wanted with the more mythological. And watching you guys play Elden Ring has just been such a delight, and looks to feed the junkie in me of what I want out of a game that just kills you repetitively. But we'll talk all about that.
Yeah, the only thing barring you from playing it quickly is the fact that PS5s are unavailable. And we'll talk about that.
You don't have PS5, you don't have a PC that
or
can
a
run it.
gaming computer,
Yeah, but I definitely, the medieval side scratches my itch more with their work than some of the spin-offs, but, we'll get there. Jacob, however, what's your history with the old FromSoft?
Well, first of all, I want to say I think we have the perfect spectrum of people to talk about this, because we have Colin the Watcher, hasn't played it yet. We have Mike, the Dark Souls expert, the FromSoft expert, and we have me. I've, my history with FromSoft, the only one I've really gotten into before now was, if you've seen our early episodes, it became a meme. You know what it is. Bloodborne.
Yeah, Bloodborne.
Bloodborne, yes. To me, that was my favorite. I've tried Dark Souls. I've tried Dark Souls 3. Didn't really stick with me too much, but Bloodborne was the one where I really powered through and was into it. I think that just comes down to the difference in combat styles, basically, whereas Dark Souls, it's more of a methodical, wait for your moment, then attack. Bloodborne had the mechanic of getting your health back by responding with an attack. So I like that, the more aggressive play style, which I think carries over to my Elden Ring play style. But I think we have the perfect spectrum of people, because we have Mike, the Dark Souls expert, and then me, I've played a lot of open world games. I've played all the major open world games probably, other than Breath of the Wild, I think, because I don't have a Nintendo system.
And Colin's got us covered there with Breath of the Wild, right?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm kind of the open world expert. And what this game is, it's open world Dark Souls, so we've got all the bases covered. and I'm excited to talk
take.
about it.
You
Yeah,
got the perfect D&D party of how to analyze the Elden.
exactly. And then we've got
But
Colin,
let's-
the Watcher.
Yeah.
Well, but let's talk about the expert then. Now,
Yeah.
Mike, like the reason we did the early Dark Souls episode, we pitched Normies Like Us. What is Normies Like Us? You know, you talk about topics that like everybody kind of knows, likes, as general opinions. We're throwing stuff out, and you go like, and of course, Dark Souls, which is widely considered by gamers to be like the game of all time. We're like, okay, yeah, and we did it. It's your favorite series ever.
Yeah, I'd say 100%. And I think it's the generational series. I mean, when you say most important game ever, greatest game ever, it's like, I don't know, is that Pong? Is that Mario? Is that Pac-Man? Is that Mario
Minecraft.
64? Who the heck knows?
It is
Minecraft.
Super Mario World, by the way.
But for this generation,
I believe it's Minecraft.
yeah,
but-
Minecraft. That's right. Yeah. Candy
Might
Crush,
be.
Farmville. But this series of the Souls games created a new genre. I would say like the newest genre of the modern era, the Souls-like games. So it's hugely influential. I love them. I've been playing them since Demon Souls. The last one I played up to the remake on PS5, and I've beaten them all except Bloodborne, which a lot of people say is the best one. So
Oh.
I still need to get around to that. But yeah, I love this series. Demon Souls, the original, is my favorite, but that does not necessarily mean best. And
And
I'll
you've
be
played
discussing the best
Sekiro?
at the end of this.
You are
Yeah.
the only one of us who has played Sekiro, and
Yeah.
is that just the widest swing for them? And
Well, that's
It's,
more about parrying. It's less about dodging and blocking, more about parrying and riposting, right?
It's even more of, let's say, a rhythm game. It's about getting your parries timed with the enemy swings. It's the most difficult the combat has been in any of these, but there's
Oh,
a
wow.
jump button, which was a first, and that carries over. So I would just say, right before we jump into it, Elden Ring is kind of a culmination of everything that FromSoft
Yes.
has learned making everything from Demon Souls to Bloodborne to Sekiro to the Dark Souls series. There's elements of all of those games in this, and it's like the perfect balance, let's tease,
Yes.
of those elements, and they all have a role to play in the way the game allows for player expression. So it's going to be an interesting conversation.
They do. I'm very excited to talk about the mechanics. Obviously, we're going to talk about the story as well, Mike. And I just want to point out, very famously, you had not seen Game of Thrones previous to doing this podcast, and then watched it all and did a very, what I consider one of our most famous, fantastic, go back and check our thoughts on, Game of Thrones through that whole run. I don't know why I'm bringing that up. Wink, wink. Maybe that will make sense in a bit. Let's
Oh.
dive in. Let's hit it. Let's talk Elden Ring.
On to the lands in between.
We're your hosts, but of course we're here in our mythical lounge with two giant fingers that we're about to slip on the Elden Ring.
The two fingers.
Frodo of the two fingers.
He always comes up.
Mhm.
He's always there.
That's right.
Yep. I need to mod that into the soundtrack. Anyway, back here talking the Elden Ring. We Colin teased it up top. Game of Thrones. I never watched it until I was finally hooked by you guys' conversation and praised for it. And so we have a connection with that. George R.R. Martin, author of Game of Thrones, has some involvement with this. And early on,
Yes.
that was a big draw for like a lot of people were really excited about that. They obviously one of the best world building game developers and game directors, Hidetaka Miyazaki, with his previous work. Many of them considered masterpieces. George R.R. Martin with his world building and the masterpiece that Game of Thrones phenomenon that has become working together to create a very grim, dark world. And I think the two of them, I don't think anyone likes killing their characters or players more than they do. So it was a match made in hell or heaven,
True.
depending
True.
on how you look at it. So,
And really,
yep.
how much is he involved? No one really knows, to the level, but it's generally, known that he kind of did the lore, the backstory of the different characters of the kings and queens that kind of make up this realm. So he's obviously really good at world building and genealogies and that kind of thing. So I think that was his main input into this. And then Miyazaki just took it and put all his weird shit on top of that, right?
It's like, here's all your proper nouns for your main characters. Here's your proper nouns for your lands. Here's how they're
Right.
related to one another politically or, based on belief, etc. And then they just kind of, all right, let's throw some berserk on top of it. And then That's
Yeah.
pretty much the cake.
Put
how it
some
was made.
weird dogs in there, some birds with knives on their feet, and you got a game.
Yeah. Call it a day. Typical FromSoftware stuff. So that seems to be the involvement. And Colin said open world. I mean, looking at this thing, like from the perspective of the watcher, Colin, when we're playing it, like, does it feel inspired by George R.R. Martin at all? Just on its face, its presentation, the way these kingdoms are kind of related.
Not even a bit. Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit.
Jacob, our George R. R. Martin expert, is there like any standout moment or character? Is there like a big fat guy who like rambles on a monologue for like 2 hours about how good the meat pies are, like in traditional George R. R. fashion?
There might be someone like that.
No.
I just haven't found him.
There's
There
one.
could be.
I think there's one sort of Easter egg Game of Thrones reference in this, and there's the grafted greatsword that you can get, which is a sword. It's a colossal sword that's a basically a bunch of swords fused together like the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones, but as a sword. I think that's a Game of Thrones reference. There's also the Berserk Guts sword from Berserk is also in the game, and that's a reference to Berserk. Obviously, there's also a lot of visual references to Berserk. Yeah, so not too much of a Game of Thrones influence that I've seen. No.
Well, I kind of what I was taking away from it, and there will be light spoilers here and there. Again, neither of us has beaten the game. I'm about 80 hours in. Jacob, about how
the
many
game
hours
is
are you in?
incomprehensibly huge. I'm about 60 hours in, and I keep finding new areas where I think I'm like, okay, I think I'm getting towards like the third act of this game. Oh no, here's an entire new area that I have unlocked now.
Wow.
Yeah, I keep doing that.
It keeps getting bigger. I found a new area today. So it's massive. And I guess from the George R.R. Martin of it all, Game of Thrones famously has that opening that shows the map, and it's very clear to understand where each region is located and how that might politically ally or work with each other. So when you're starting to explore the map of this game, like right at the outset, once you create your character and kind of enter the world, I felt like being the first open world Souls game, there's this connection to it, and there's no loading screens. Like, you could just ride from one point of the map to the other. So you'll be in one kingdom that seems like they got their shit together, and then you ride 3-4 minutes the other way, and now you're in another kingdom where all hell is broken loose. There's monsters and monstrosities, and it's like, okay, there's crazy shit going on. So being able to travel like seamlessly between these regions did give me that feel of Game of Thrones, where it's like, okay, I know clearly when I'm, with the Starks and anything like that. Like it.
Yeah, you start in the first area.
That telegraphs very clearly.
Yeah, the first area is like very nice. There's grass, some nice sunny skies, and then you go one area over, and then you're in like a totally different region where everything's trying to kill you. Basically,
it's a hellscape. Right.
Yeah.
And when you go north, and it's Hogwarts, right? It's like there's all this variety.
Yeah. But I'm really excited to talk about the open world design in this game, because I feel like it's one of the most interesting, not just from the FromSoft Dark Souls angle, but from an open world angle. It's one of the most unique open world games that I've ever played. So I'm very excited to just get into all of that.
Yeah, and Colin, let me ask you, because you played Dark Souls 1, and like famously, a lot of people credit Dark Souls 1, especially the first, let's say, 2/3 of the game, with having some of the strongest level design in gaming history. A lot of the shortcuts that loop back around and stuff. Does the open world, does it still kind of, do you get the sense that there's the same attention to detail and kind of love and care kind of put into what you've seen so far?
I'm reminded of those times with Dark Souls where you would literally move the analog stick, shift your camera perspective, and be like, oh my god, I can walk around this thing, the barest edge or whatever, and it does open up like you guys are saying. Yeah, I would say watching you guys go through Elden Ring, and the fact that it's just, not only does it seem just truly tremendously endless, but Mike, in the same way that you said Sekiro adds the jumping element, we kind of have to talk about the first exploratory element added to this thing for the first time for a Souls game, the horse. You guys are literally traversing so much ground that it's like, well, we got to give you a fucking steed right away, right?
Yeah, they have the horse. Well, first of all, they have jumping in this game as well, and I think that adds a whole new angle to level design. and the horse as well, because it would be, impossible to get around this world without the horse, the speed that your character can move. So that's a great addition. And there is also the legacy dungeon. So if you want that same level design from Dark Souls, they have that incorporated into this game with legacy dungeons that are that style throughout this game. So you'll be, in a pasture, and then you'll ride up to, the castle or wherever you're trying to go, and it kind of transitions into that old school Dark Souls leveling. So a lot of variety in this game and a lot of ways to get around.
Yeah, so a lot of people were concerned, some Souls fans were like, oh, it's going to be open world, which means we won't have this kind of carefully considered encounter design that, FromSoftware is known for having really thoughtful encounter design that's meant to teach you something. But in order for that to happen, they have to know which direction you're coming. Because if you come in from the back door, all of a sudden, that's out the window. So open world, you can go anywhere, whatever direction you want. How are they going to do that? That was answered with the legacy dungeons. But the open world itself, first of all, it's stunning. It's a hellscape at times, but it's never not gorgeous. But Jacob,
cool.
as kind of the expert of open worlds, people were also worried like it's just going to be empty and boring, like Dark Souls 2.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, it's just so empty here. It's big, but it's empty. Like, how does it feel, from a population and density? Is there enough there to keep you engaged, or is it lacking?
I think there is. And I think part of it is the geography of this open world is so well done. Everything is so well considered. Like, it's like they sculpted this geography. Height is a big factor in a lot of things. You look at, the popular open world games, Far Cry's, your Witcher 3's, your, Assassin's Creed's post Odyssey, or Origins. I've played them all, and they all kind of follow a formula. There's that Ubisoft formula. You've got you've got a checklist of things to do. You've got things pointing you where to go all the time. You got to collect 10 flowers or whatever, turn them in. This game takes a very different approach. Yeah, this game, it doesn't really tell you, like, it gives you a general direction. It's like, oh, you need to go to that castle or whatever, and then it's just like, go explore. And I think that's what the genius of this game is, that you don't go to the boss right away, right? If you try to go to the first boss in the game that you have to beat story wise, you're going to get stomped. It wants you to go explore the world first and figure out what's going on, level up a little bit, and get some experience before you face them. And I think the world design really encourages that sense of exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the open world, it offers. This is, I would say, because all Souls games, right? Everyone jokes, oh, they don't tell you what to do, right? And like that's part of it. They want you to figure it out. It's like when you booted up Metroid, you get dropped in there in Super Nintendo. You just have to start exploring, and that's kind of
right.
They wanted to bring some of that old like Nintendo difficulty. That was their intent with Demon Souls, and it's always been there. So everyone's like, oh, Souls games are really hard, but because of the open world, it allows this to be the most accessible, in my opinion, of any of the FromSoftware Souls games, because
I totally
you can
agree with
explore and level up, like you said.
Yeah, I do think it's the most accessible, but they have that accessibility without sacrificing the difficulty and what these games are known for. They're able to translate that difficulty while making it accessible. And I think the reason for that is if you get stuck on a boss in Dark Souls, you kind of can't progress the game until you beat that boss, right? Until you beat that area. This game,
Ornstein
if you
and
get
Snow
stuck on a boss,
looking at you.
Yeah, you can go back and farm souls from like earlier levels, but eventually you got to move on. This game, if you get stuck on a boss, you can just fuck off and just walk somewhere else for the next 30 minutes and find a whole new adventure. You can literally walk in any direction in this game and just make your own adventure. And like you could literally play this game for like 20 hours just exploring before even approaching the first boss.
That's legitimately what I did.
Yeah.
Because a big thing in early Souls games, especially when you're getting into speedrunning, which, I'll have a brief note on that. But like I try to speedrun some of these games, or even when you played them enough times, you just use speedrun strats to get through some of the bullshit that you've done 100 times. But like a big thing is you go do suicide runs. You'll go to areas that you're clearly not leveled for. Just try to steal all the loot on the ground and then build your character. But this is so massive. I literally spent 20 hours riding my horse into all the areas where everything is killing me in one hit, grabbing whatever I could off the ground, dying, but then now I have all this loot.
Yeah.
And I leveled up so it's 20 hours before I even engaged with the story content. And that's just
and I'm sure
You could beat a whole game in that much time.
Yeah,
Right.
and I'm sure speedrunners are going to have fun like figuring out the best routes because this game is so massive that there's going to be different ways to approach even speedrunning, and it's going to take
Yeah.
a while, I
Right.
think, before anyone figures out like the perfect, like most optimal path.
They got it down to an hour already, but we'll see which
Yeah,
is insane.
that's insane.
The game
Yeah.
has been beaten
Well,
in
but
an
hold
hour.
on. I want to back up to something
Yeah.
you guys said, because that is the most tremendous compliment either of you could pay this game. The fact that it does not sacrifice its quality while maintaining this level of difficulty,
Yes, yes.
and that you say it's the most accessible game that's ever come to this franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I want to propose to you both. I think this is a legacy thing. I know you threw out Metroid, Mike, but
Yep.
if Dark Souls or Miyazaki game mastered games didn't have this air of difficulty already, do you guys think that a new game could come along and be this purposely obtuse or, so difficult, and wouldn't it just get criticized to death for just being hard?
Maybe. Well, I think this game has been criticized. There's been a whole difficulty discourse around this game, which
With every one of them, but this is the one
Yeah.
that more people are playing because it's
because
accessible,
this
so
has
it's a
become
bigger
the most
discourse.
mainstream, the biggest seller from FromSoft ever. But
Yeah.
talking about that accessibility, Dark Souls, they're not games for everybody. Like I would not recommend them to casual gamers.
I
They're
said
not
my
for everyone.
brother didn't like it.
Yeah.
Some people don't
This
like
game-
spicy peppers. It's fine.
Yeah, this
It's
game,
alright.
while maybe not for everybody, I would recommend it to a wider variety of people. Because, like I said, if you get stuck on a boss, there's also like 70 more bosses in this game. There's so many side bosses, so you can just literally go do anything, and so you can do whatever you want. And I think also with the difficulty, which we can get into,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can get in there.
there's no easy mode in this game, right? That's what people are always asking for. Put an easy mode in. Miyazaki says no. The easy mode is your play style. So there's a variety of play styles, right? You can use magic, you can use summons, you can be a range, you can use your bow, and generally the magic is like the easy mode in Dark Souls, and I think they really beefed up the magic in this game. So if you really want to take an easier path through this game, focus on sorcery, build up your stats, and you can like one-shot the bosses with different spells and stuff.
Yeah, and so to back up a little bit from Colin's point, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, these have always been difficult. Demon Souls was started out with the premise of we want you to be rewarded through figuring it out yourself. And there's a lot of hard fights in that game, but an equal number of the bosses in that game are like puzzles, where it's like you just got to kind of figure out the trick. And it's like you're rewarded for figuring out the trick. It wasn't until Dark Souls where like it got a reputation for being so hard that Bandai Namco is like, we're going to lean into that. And like your games are not about exploration and discovery. It's about get good, kind of. So the identity of these series is kind of informed by the Bandai Namco marketing as much as it is the design of Miyazaki himself. So that reputation
have now
is
a
a little bit
reputation.
inflated.
Yeah.
And now they have to live up to it. So
Totally.
everything's got to be bigger and badder and harder.
Right.
And this
But-
addresses that. Well, like Jacob's saying, bosses will wreck
and not-
you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just so excited to talk about it. I keep going off on tangents, but
No, I know, but
uh,
yeah. Let me wrap this up real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's back of exactly what you were saying. Like you could do magic, that's easy mode. Even in Demon Souls, he said if you want an easier time, I suggest you pick the Royal, which is the magic
Interesting.
starting class. So he's been saying magic is easy mode. But because it brings elements from every other Souls game, the level of player expression has never been higher, just like Jacob said. So you can do
Totally.
whatever you want, and everything is viable. And if you want to run around naked and get killed in one hit, you can do that. Or if you want to have magic and stay far away and kill everything else in one hit, you can do that. And the amount of
Yeah.
player expression with the Sekiro jumping, and there's stealth mechanics now. You can sneak up on guys. That's never been in anything
yeah.
but Sekiro. So there's a lot of variety in player
it's
expression.
truly, it's truly pick your own, choose your own adventure, choose your own difficulty through your play style.
Love
And
that.
so
Choose
I
your
think
own
that's what
difficulty.
makes this
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what makes this game so genius is that they were able to translate the difficulty of these Dark Souls games into an accessible open world game that anyone could pick up and enjoy without sacrificing that difficulty. I think that's what makes this game so genius.
Yeah, and a big part of Souls, there's a toxic side of the community that's like, oh, you use the spirit ashes, which are like
Right.
Pokemon. Like you get these enemies that you can summon to help you in battle. Like, oh, you're not really playing the game right. It's like, well, if it's in the game, you're allowed to
And this
use
is
it.
Yeah, and this is the first game that has those. Like there have been summons where you can summon
Yeah.
other
Like
players or even
NPCs.
NPCs. But
Solaire,
this is
shout out, yep.
this is a whole dynamic in the game where you collect these different ashes, and they're like little ghost pets that you can summon, and they
Mhm.
can tank. They can tank damage. They can kind of draw the boss away from you, and it just makes it so that you don't have to get good to beat this game. You just have to, choose a different play style, and you can still enjoy it.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, to people, there's the gatekeeping or the get good side of the community. Like, we say it as a joke because sometimes someone's like, oh, how do I beat this boss? And, like, literally the only advice is you're just going to have to get good. Like, at a certain point, if you're summoning and you don't know the move set, it's like, I can show you how to do a kickflip 100 times, but at some point, you're going to have to figure it out and land it. Like, you're just going to have to do it. So the get good is just, you're eventually just going to have to figure it out. But you can go level up, you can get stronger. But if you take kind of pleasure or pride yourself in feeling superior to people who used summons in the game, like they paid $60 for it. Who the hell cares? And it makes me not want to be proud of you for doing something more difficult because you're being a jerk about it. So if you did something
and if you want to beat it,
great.
if you want to beat it the hard way, that's great too. Like,
don't put people down. That's all.
Yeah, if you're one of those people that says like, oh, if you use summons, you didn't really play the game. That's actually completely opposite of what FromSoft is saying, because they're saying we're giving you all these different tools. You can choose your own play style that works for you.
I played Pyromancer.
Yeah.
Yo, that's the Soul level 1. You could beat Dark Souls 1 as a Pyromancer at level 1. I've done it. And
even with,
it's all there.
Yeah, and with Magic, I've seen videos of people like, going up to the first boss and just one-shotting him. But you also have to do a lot of preparation for that. You have to level up your character. You have to get the right spells. You can't just do that from day one, right? So you still have to put the work in. You have to grind it out. But this game, the way the open world is, it makes it so easy to do that. It's inviting you just to go explore and find your own fun.
You know what's incredible about kind of, again, the shortcut? It circled all the way back around to the open world because the difficulty is tied so much with that because of the things in the open world, because we don't only have legacy dungeons. We have smaller like mines where you'll get materials to upgrade your weapons, which sometimes upgrading your weapons is more important than upgrading your character. You'll have heroes' graves, which is like a different kind of puzzle that offers a different kind of unique reward at the bottom. So there's different areas that serve different functions and give you different loot. So like even the caves and the random areas, they're serving a specific function as far as how you level up or get stronger. So by exploring the open world, you'll make your weapon stronger, you'll find new spells, and by way of that, either set up your character perfectly or mitigate difficulty, whatever floats your boat, but it's all out in the open world and tied to it.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's lots of side bosses. Like generally in all those mines and those different side dungeons, there's usually a mini boss or a boss that you can fight at the end of it. And
that might be,
I think there's like
weaker, potentially, unless you go way too far, than the story boss.
Yeah.
So you can kind of warm up, get
But
better,
there's
get
so
some
many
points. Yep.
that even if you get stuck, and trust me, I'm not very good at FromSoft games. Like I'm not a combat expert. I get stuck a lot on a lot of different bosses. And I'll just fuck off, go do something else for a couple hours, come back when I'm a little higher level or something, and just do it that way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the result. We talked about the hardness, but facing a boss or mini boss, you're gonna die. Okay, let's talk this. Miyazaki was quoted today saying, "Players need to learn to accept the deaths," which is an incredibly philosophical thing for a man to say, I think, and kind of weighty and stuff.
Yes.
I'll ask you guys right now, not only how do you cope and handle with it and keep moving forward, whatever, all that good stuff, but Jacob, what is your highest death count for an encounter right now? Do you know?
Or maybe it's the number of hours. If you don't have the number of deaths,
question.
how
I guess
long
that's
did it
true
take
too,
you?
yeah.
I mean, I've had bosses that have taken me 20 tries, 30 tries maybe. I don't always keep track.
30 tries.
But I want to use an example. So like when you first come out into the open world after the tutorial, right? There is a boss. Everyone knows it. It's called the Tree Sentinel.
It's
and
the
this
first
guy,
boss you see. No spoiler.
Yeah, you walk out, and this is what I think there's a misunderstanding with people who are either new to these games, don't know that much about them. So you walk out into this landscape. The first thing you see is this giant guy in gold armor on a horse, right? And you think, oh, that must be like the first enemy I need to fight. You go up to him, you get your shit smacked, right? You just get destroyed, right?
He smacks your shit.
He smacks your shit. So you think, oh, okay. Try to fight him a couple more times, and you just get annihilated each time. And you realize, well, you should realize that maybe you're not meant to fight this guy yet, and you should go explore. But a lot of people will just get stuck on that boss and think, well, I need to kill this guy before I move on, and they'll just keep bashing their head against the wall. And I think that's where some of the confusion comes from people who have. There's a lot of people that might have bought this game and then returned it in like 2 hours and said, "Oh, it's terrible. I didn't understand it." Like,
these
I
games
just got
were
killed every
hard.
time.
They were just as hard as they told me they were, right? Like,
Yeah.
Oh man.
But I think that boss is kind of a lesson to teach you. Oh, you're getting annihilated. Go do some other stuff and come back when you're a little bit stronger.
And it's not an Ubisoft game. Nothing pops up to say if an enemy is too strong, explore the area around you. It's just like fuck.
No,
fuck
this
you.
game, it doesn't hold your hand. I'll say that
At all.
It's the most accessible FromSoft game, but it does
doesn't
not
even
hold your
fingers.
hand. No. But
that's a good example though, because a lot of people would hit that as a brick wall and they would bash up against it, before realizing they need to explore. But then some people, like our friend Adam, he spent 8 hours right when he started the game fighting it at base level on foot. It's easier to engage that when you get your horse.
But
like
he's
you're
a Dark
supposed to come
Souls
back
veteran.
later. But he's very good. But it took him 8 hours.
He knew the deal.
And he beat it on foot. And that was his personal challenge. And he doesn't look down upon people who came back 10 hours later and slapped
some
him.
people want to do it the hard way. But you shouldn't look down on anyone who beats the game.
Yeah.
They beat the game. If they get the achievement in Steam or whatever, it's like, you're not any different because you use summons or anything like that.
Yeah, but as far as dying, be prepared to. Dark Souls 1 has been saying that, prepare to die. I look at the Souls games as lessons in how to cope with loss. No matter how much you lose, you can always get it back, even if you lose 100,000 souls or runes, as they're called, to level up. Just stay calm. It's just game. That being said, I think a lot of our friends are some of the most calm people that I know. Every one of us on Discord has raged and been like, fuck this. I hate this game's bullshit.
The
game of the year, but I hate it. I hate it. 10 out of 10. It's like you kind of have that relationship, that love-hate. And it does happen. And a lot of it comes down to your build. I mean, like my build, I like to use a two-handed, great sword. And I just do as much damage as possible, but I don't wear armor because I want to be able to roll.
Just run around, loincloth, giant club.
Yeah, big bonka bakas, So I just jump around and smack shit.
My playstyle is very different. I chose the samurai class when I first started, which you start with a katana, and I was like, oh, I'm in. And it's a dex strength build, what's known as a quality build, as Mike informed me. But so it's a much more faster pace, kind of like get in, kill him before he can kill me kind of thing. So I use more dexterity. That's the thing you can do. Like I said, you can use magic. There's a lot of different play styles.
And what I'll say for Souls games, and this is from Bonfireside Chat, great podcast. They kind of got me into podcasting in general. They would talk about the Souls games. They're now doing a series on Elden Ring. Check out their Patreon. But they coined this phrase that is, Souls games will find your weakness. So no matter what play style you have, there'll be some boss that is your brick wall, and maybe your friend can just walk right through it. And a lot of that's play style, a lot of it's experience. So for me, I get one shot. So there's bosses that, I probably have to try 40, 50 times just because one mistake and I'm done. But the satisfaction I get from being naked and finally doing it is worth it to me personally. Meanwhile, someone like Jacob, he could stack up bleed or poison and stuff because he's getting more hits per second. If I whiff against a fast boss, it's probably going to stun knock me to death. Yeah, I need to make contact. So it's all in how you want to approach it.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you're saying about dying, how basically every death is a lesson. If you died, you probably did something wrong, and you can learn from that and improve.
It's generally your fault, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's the camera, sometimes you fall off a ledge you didn't know was there.
But now you know
But-
it's there, so don't do that next time.
But I think that idea, that philosophy of using death as a lesson is so interesting, because a lot of people, when they die too much in a video game, they just get annoyed by it and just quit, and they say, why am I dying all the time? They don't learn and realize that you're supposed to die a lot in the beginning. And Dark Souls has, it's even written into the lore of why you're dying. You know, you're a character who's going hollow, right? So you're dying and being reborn. It's part of the lore. So I think that's a really interesting mechanic of these games.
Yeah, and that's been, death is supposed to be a teacher. Demon Souls, again, 101, that was Miyazaki's philosophy. We don't want it to be unfair, and they're not unfair. Like, if you get angry and you're like, oh, this boss is bullshit, that attack's bullshit. If you really look at it objectively, 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, it's not. Like, there's a way for you to do it. If you use your brain, you learn from, your past experience, and look at the toolkit that's provided you, whether that's spirit ashes or putting a buff on your. There's mechanics in place. Having a friend help you. Like, there's a lot you can do to overcome these things, and it's usually in your control. And it's when you get emotional and blame other things and don't take accountability for your actions. Now we're doing real life stuff, right? There's a lot of lessons that you can apply to real life with these games, I think, and that's what I appreciate.
Yeah, and that's kind of my boss cycle is I'll just get more and more frustrated. I'll start to spiral, and then I play worse. But the best feeling when you play these games is fighting a boss for a long time, dying, finally understanding how you can beat him, finally getting his attack patterns down. Click. And when you finally beat him, that feeling is so good. And I had this with Bloodborne too, where it's like that boss that gave you trouble for so long, you finally understand how to beat him and you can do it. And it's a real sense of accomplishment that I don't feel with a lot of games,
The Dark Souls games, to me, I become that anime or manga, whatever it is, One Punch Man, where literally I thirst for the challenge. I am jealous of every death you guys have experienced, because that means you are playing this game. And like I said, I want that encounter that pushes it over the threshold. The thing that makes the first Dark Souls so fascinating is walking through that graveyard for the first time and coming across that skeleton. We've said this 1,000 times before, and a skeleton is the common enemy of every fantasy thing that's ever been made. But it doesn't matter if you are the lowest class or life form in Dark Souls or the end game boss. Everything is deadly and dangerous at all times. It pushes your mental acuity. It pushes your sense of observation, skill, hand-eye coordination to constantly be on edge and do that. And it's akin to, I said it before, but Super Mario of, look, it doesn't matter if you're Bowser or a fucking toadstool thing or a little mushroom walking at you. One touch kills you. That's how it used to be in video games.
Yeah.
And I think Elden Ring really lives up to that legacy too, because literally anything can kill you in this game and will kill you. And if you underestimate even a common enemy and get cornered or get overwhelmed, it can be over in a second. And that's a lot of my deaths, non-boss related, when I'm just going through different parts of the dungeon, are like that, where
you just get ganged up on or trapped.
Well, even Mike, I have seen you chase a dog thinking dog easy, and a pack comes at you, and it's pack not so easy.
Yeah, no, you get completely jumped by it. It keeps you honest, right? Would you say, Jacob? Because like you get a little lazy, and that's it.
Yeah. If you underestimate any common enemy, and this happens, this probably my most deaths in the open world have just been trying to get past someone and underestimating them and just getting destroyed. Yeah. And then I have to come back, I have to get my runes again. It's a whole thing.
Never take your eye off the ball. It's the oldest lesson in games. It's the first games we played.
Yeah. So I think, looking at the difficulty and the variety of play in the open world, I mean, they've obviously achieved something really, in my mind, really special with this. And it's unlike, it's like, the Souls games, but it's unlike any open world game I've played, to a large degree. And the fact that this is their first open world they've ever done is kind of incredible, because it just keeps going. Like, it is massive. I can't stress that enough. And it's dense. There's always stuff to do. Like in those dungeons where you can get ganged up on, or the mines, or the heroes' graves, which are like puzzles. Catacombs are like little puzzles too. You got to like find out how to navigate it, to open the secret door. There's always a lever that opens a secret door that's got the treasure, and they have a specific kind of treasure, right? So all these things.
Keep an eye out for fake walls, guys.
Yeah, hidden walls.
Totally.
Yeah. That's a good transition, Colin. Though maybe it's time to mention the community aspect of this game, because there's a lot of social features that even if you're not doing PvP, you're definitely interacting with. So let's talk about that real quick.
We're back. We're talking Elden Rings. Now, we're talking a Soulsbourne game, quote unquote. We should explain what that
Soulsbourne
is, which is, of
Ekiro.
course,
Sorry.
a ring. We'll
That's
put
what
that
we
word
call
on
it.
the end too.
Call it the
Yeah.
ring, yeah.
The Miyazaki verse of this type of game, right? And there has always been a social element. Now, you brought this up, Mike, but in the past, there have been these things like soapstones or whatever that, has encouraged communication, but I would say malicious communication. And it's interesting how Elden Ring
Maybe both.
changes that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally, multiplayer in Souls games has been around since Demon Souls, and I want to tell this quick anecdotal story. Miyazaki was driving up a snowy hill, and then cars were getting stuck. So then the car behind them would just get behind it and push it over the hill, and then the car behind them would get them over the hill, and it would just keep happening. And like everybody did it without kind of communicating with each other. It just became, this is how we're going to help. And he's like, man, that guy who helped me out, like, I wonder what his life is like. Would we be friends if we met in real life? Would we be enemies? I don't know. But, he helped me without knowing me. So he liked the idea of interacting with strangers for either a common goal, but then, also maybe, they're an antagonist to you. So that's how you had cooperative summons and invaders who will come kill you. So that's been around. And then the communication of the messages, you can't type whatever you want. It's a rudimentary system that has nouns, verbs, adverbs, concepts, enemy names, place names, and you can like fill in templates. Beware of large enemy.
Fortnite.
Yeah, but now we're
People's
getting Fortnite.
creativity with those, small selection of words is pretty funny though, right?
And you end up with always in every game. There's generally a couple joke messages that every game has. It's set, and we're starting to see the memes. In Demon Souls, it was try sticky white stuff. In Dark Souls, it was great chest ahead in front of every female MP, like dumb stuff like that. So now,
Right.
Hey, can you imagine being the first guy who sees a dragon and puts dog down? And just everybody else is doing it.
So to discuss some of these fun memes, what are some of the fun Elden Ring messages that are out?
There's the classic that has been a holdover from Dark Souls, right? Where any ledge, there'll be a message that says, try jumping. And then you jump off and you die. And
it's been around
funny,
since
right?
the beginning. Yes. Try jumping,
I think a big one in this game, because people are trying to find those illusory walls so much, and they're kind of rare in this game. There's only certain areas that'll have them. But generally, any wall you look at, there's always a message that'll say,
hidden
item
path
ahead.
ahead.
I gotta just try
though.
it,
I always try
it,
and 99% it never works.
But a lot of jokesters in here, and of course you get your tri-finger butthole, those kind of things. You get your Fortnite, like you said.
Yes, which the Fortnite, it's just literally saying the words fort at night.
Do you want to tell them about people in Japan getting confused by the Fortnite?
So obviously
message?
The Fortnite meme here, it makes sense because it's in English, fort and night, but in Japanese it's literally the kanji for fort and the kanji for night, which is not phonetically Fortnite, the game title. So they're waiting by these fortresses thinking something happens at night, right? And they're just waiting for nightfall, thinking a special enemy is going to come, or there's an event, and like nothing happens. Like, why are they just Fortnite? Because
it's funny because there are literal bosses in this that you can only fight at night, and you have to come back at a certain time of day.
Some of them might be near forts too, so there's like confirmation happening, a false confirmation,
But I do love this angle of community, these shared messages. One game that I think kind of tries to expand on this concept is actually Death Stranding. Kojima, right? Death Stranding has a big community aspect where you can put up zip lines and different things that other people can then use. It's sort of a shared world.
Connecting the world, yeah.
So I feel like he was really trying to build on that concept with Death Stranding. But I really like the messages.
And sometimes they're helpful too. Like there'll be some that are legit, like oh, be wary of ambush, or watch left. And then when you walk forward, there's an enemy who jumps out from the left. And like, I'll go back a lot of times, and you can appraise the messages and rate them as good or bad. So I'll be like, oh, dude, you help me not die. I'll give him a thumbs up, and it actually gives you a free heal.
Health.
Yeah, if your message gets appraised.
So if you
would be good.
Yeah,
it encourages you to, if you have a popular message that gets appraised 4,000 times, that's another way to play this game on easy mode because you're just getting healed left and right all the time.
Free heals, yeah.
Yeah. So I love that mechanic. And it does encourages creativity, encourages helping people out. There's also troll messages sometimes, like people will put messages at the bottom of ladders or, buy certain things. So the button to read a message is the same button to climb a ladder. So if you're trying to panic, climb a ladder to get away from someone, they can really troll you with the messages sometimes.
A lot of times they'll just say lever or ladder, and you just read the word ladder.
Oh, thanks a lot. But that's just another aspect of this game, and I think it's great.
Yeah, and the community, again, there's always been the PvP community. People can invade you and try to kill you in your world. They'll get a special item that they can turn in for quest rewards on their end, or you can have someone be summoned into your world to help you defeat those people, or you could help, it's a whole thing.
Or you can even summon people to help you with a boss, right?
Yeah, you can have people help you with a boss, help you beat an area, and that's all part of the built-in difficulty mitigation. You helped anybody fight any bosses or summoned any human players at all, Jacob?
I have not. I would like to mess around with the co-op stuff with you and some of our other friends that are playing, but I feel like I kind of have to beat the game
plus
first.
Thing.
Yeah,
for sure. That's
once
where
I
I'm
beat
at.
the game and I've seen everything, then the co-op stuff could be really fun.
Can begin.
Interesting.
Colin, did you ever co-op with people in the other Souls games you'd experienced?
No, because I was always so scared of invasions, Mike, that I would always kind of play disconnected. But before we even get your history of playing with multiplayers, I will say, watching the two of you side by side, not even playing together.
That's how we've been playing co-op.
I mean, it is because you are seeing each other. I'm commenting on both. It's the greatest moment ever, and I'll keep parroting it. But Normies, for those that didn't experience, these two fucking knock back their own separate bosses at the same time. Incredible. And then delivered death blows at the exact same time, got the kill screen. I mean, it was fucking fantastic.
We had simultaneous criticals and then simultaneous deaths.
Killing blows.
It was like, it was perfectly synced. It was amazing. But we should say, Normies, what we've been doing, and I think a lot of people would have fun playing this. So what we do is we get on a Discord channel with all our friends that are playing this game. We'll have 5-6 people in there sometimes, all playing their game or watching us play, and we'll stream it to each other. So we're all in different parts of the game, and we're just experiencing this game together, but we're all in different parts with different play styles, fighting different bosses. And it's just a blast.
Spoilers, it's so natural.
It's so big.
So fun.
Yeah.
It's so big, you're never going to run into that problem.
You're going to forget about it.
Normies who are listening to this, we haven't said anything to even spoil like a thing.
We haven't even said the name of the first boss. Well, not Tree Sentinel notwithstanding, the first proper boss,
Yeah, the first main boss. I mean,
that's a good point, Jacob, because we're literally like have 4 streams going, and like everybody's just like, what's that thing? Where is that? Hey, pull up your map. I'm going to put a marker on my map. And then we're like doing the shared discovery. It's like a schoolyard thing. It's
Look
really,
at this mask I'm wearing.
Yeah,
when we say
mask,
that, this game doesn't give you guidelines all the time, you'll talk to an NPC. They'll say, bring me this key. They won't tell you where the key is. They won't tell you, anything about it. You just have to figure out where this key is. And it could be across the map. Yeah, it could be literally on the other side of the map in a totally different region, and you just kind of have to figure it out if you don't, look it up or something. So playing this game together, it's like we're all, seeing different parts of the game for the first time, and it's like a shared experience, right?
Yeah, and this is maybe a good way to transition over to final thoughts. This last kind of bit here is, I think the strength of this game, and the strength of any open world game, is one that makes you believably feel like you're experiencing an adventure in a believable world. And I think they've definitely achieved that. Like, you feel in peril as you're exploring. You feel a sense of wonder when you come upon a new mysterious place. You feel a sense of dread when you enter a catacomb you've never been in before. Like, you feel like you're on an adventure. And so when you're playing with your friends, you're sharing information, like you're cartographers. You go north, I'll go east, you go west, I'll go south, and you're just sharing the information to help each other survive. And I think that's, even with the online community, the way it's always been intended and the way Souls has been the most fun is when it's like a sharing of information from the player base, not the developers putting waypoints on your map. And I really like that about it.
Totally. And I think, I said it a little bit in the beginning, the way they built this game as an open world game, it draws you in and it makes you want to go explore. Whereas, I've played, all the Far Cries, the Fallouts, all those games. This is the first game in a while that I've really had that sense of discovery and wanted to go to the next area. I think Far Cry 5, I played that recently. It's a great game. I enjoyed it a lot, but it does follow that Ubisoft format where it's like, oh, I see all these little question marks on my map. I know I have to go there. When you have a quest, it tells you exactly where to go. And
Skyrim.
Yeah. And a lot of times with those games, I like to take the mini map off the HUD. There's usually options you can do that, like accessibility options. And I like to just explore because when you know exactly where to go, you don't have that sense of exploration that makes you want to just wander around and see what you run into. I've had, when I played Witcher 3, that game even is like that, but the story is so good that it holds my interest,
You're right, right.
Those Assassin's Creeds, those Far Cries, because I love them too, Jacob. In the past, when it was literally just, you have those big dumb maps, and they're all sort of like blocked out except the area you're in, and the only thing you're ever going to see on that map is those places, those like bases or hubs or whatever, that will open up the rest of the map. Yeah. I used to like that in a checklisty sort of way.
Yeah.
The fact that now, even Breath of the Wild, which I would consider my favorite open world game of all time because God won't give me a PS5, and that's fine, and I've come to terms with that.
Right.
One day.
Littered with 5,000 individual icons for every instance of a thing. You want to know where ore to mine something specifically is? We'll show you on the map, because if you zoom into micro times 1,000, here's an insignia for where that is. And I just go like, that is wild how easy games have become.
Yeah, it's holding the player's hand. It's making it more accessible. If you're a casual gamer and you get into one of these games, you don't want to spend hours looking for something. You just want to play through the game. I understand that. Elden Ring is not, I would say, for casual gamers, although it could be. But I'm glad you brought up Breath of the Wild because I think that's the closest open world comparison to this game. It does take certain elements from Breath of the Wild. But like you, I used to like that. Like I said, I've played every major open world game at some point, and I like sometimes having a checklist where I just mindlessly go from thing to thing, but you just don't get that sense of exploration. You don't appreciate the world in the same way. And with those games like Far Cry, a lot of times it's like copy pasted, bandit camps, towers you got to climb to unlock the enemy. It's just, it can get really mind numbing. This game, there's no copy pasted. Like every region is so distinct. Everything is so unique. They really put a lot of care into how this world's constructed, how certain areas connect to other areas. Some places you can only get to, going certain ways. And the way again, they don't even give you the map at the beginning of the game. You have to find the fragments of the map to get the detailed map. Otherwise, you just have like a gray blob, right?
And so nothing tells you, here's where you get the map piece. You can intuit.
You just have to figure it out.
There's a symbol for it on the map, but the game doesn't tell you. Like you can see it in the unexplored region. Oh, like there's a little symbol, but they don't tell you that's what a map is. You have to figure that out when you find one and put two and two together. And then when you find new areas, I got to find that little map thing. And it's like,
and literally this game doesn't even tell you how big it is until you unlock the different areas. Like with a Far Cry, you can see
sector by sector, right?
Yeah.
You get the layout.
Even if it's, clouded or, fog of war or whatever, you can see how big the continent is generally, how big the landmass is. This game, it's like, you don't even realize until you open up a new area. Like, wow, there's this whole other area. Like the map just keeps doubling. And it's really unlike any game I've ever played.
Tripling, yeah.
Yeah, there's underground, there's secret elevators you can take to a whole nother plane of the world. It's insane.
Do you all have a favorite spot yet? Hogwarts?
Oh yeah,
Hogwarts was very cool.
We could mention that's we'll mention some names of locations. Nothing,
Yeah.
no spoilers. But the Raya Lucaria
Spoilers.
Academy, right? It's
Yeah,
it's
the
pretty
Raya
early
Lucaria
Legacy
Academy.
dungeon. That's the magic area. We call it Hogwarts because it's all the
Yeah.
sorcerers.
The first place you're going to be directed to is Stormvale Castle, right? That's the first objective that you get is like, go to Stormvale Castle, figure out what's going on there. That's the first Legacy dungeon.
The first main story,
Yeah.
objective too. Yeah.
There's Limgrave, that's the area you start in. There's Caelid, that's the kind of hellscape. Caelid, everything is
Yeah.
on fire and rotting.
Poison, rot, and mutated.
Yeah.
It's very berserk.
But each area is very distinct, and it's just like that
and I
sense
have
of exploration. It's just like really no game I've played before.
Yeah, and I
to
have
this
a
degree.
favorite area, and it ties into that concept because, as Colin's saying, you get other open worlds. Jacob's saying it too. Far Cry, they show you where all the important areas are, and again, Miyazaki's been saying since Demon Souls, I want players to feel empowered through like their own discovery, their own exploration, their own kind of effort. And the difference between going to the waypoint in Skyrim and talking to the NPC who's clearly explaining your quest list versus stumbling upon some mystery, pulling the thread of that sweater yourself, figuring out the clues, and then all of a sudden you're at this new location, or it's like, guys, I found this guy and he was in a swamp, and then I talked to him and I had to go over here, like, and then you get this reward. Like, there's nothing like it. Why would you want anything else? And it's incredible. And so my favorite area is just a random castle because there's a lot of non-story areas. So there's a lot of locations that are super cool and fleshed out, but you could miss them completely. So one area,
So what
you'll
was
have
your
to find it
favorite area?
yourself. It's called the Shaded Castle. And it's like there's a crazy guy called the Briar Knight and has some connections to other optional content. I will say there's a very hard boss in this game. They say it's the hardest boss in any Souls game. This ties into that, but
Now
like,
you gotta
you have no idea. And I've yet to fight that boss, so we'll get there.
And
but
just to show you how big this game is, I have not been to that area. I have no idea where it
Wow.
that you're talking about. So that's insane.
and it's a
Briar
fairly
Knight,
minor
that's definitely
area.
George R.R.'s stuff.
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
item
it could
descriptions
be.
are real juicy. And George R.R. Martin was the one who told him to put finger butt hole in the game because he's such a good writer.
Yeah, that's what he was
a
writing.
popular meme. But yeah, the
There's
sense
one.
of discovery is it's unlike any other open world game. Even with Skyrim, like I don't get super excited when I discover something. It's like, well, you told me to go there. Go to the dungeon.
Yeah.
It's right here. It's not like I just found it. I just found this dungeon and I went in and now I'm fighting these guys.
And I've had that, sense of discovery a few times in my, gaming past. Like, the first time I played Fallout New Vegas, the first time I played Witcher 3. But even in those games, they give you waypoints exactly where to go. I have to actively, force myself not to look because I want to explore the game at my own pace, So I do wish there was more games like this.
You bring up a very interesting point, Jacob, because I think there's one last element I guess I want to ask you guys about before we go to our final part here. I've always found Souls games to have the greatest enemy AI. I think they really are just alive and responsive and reactive. But then you just saying other open world games, Jacob, made me think of the one I guess I kind of held in the highest regard to before this, even though I think Breath of the Wild is my favorite, would be Red Dead 2. And the idea of that is that the world is so alive.
Yes.
How is it with NPCs and just other interactions with stuff? Does it really?
I would say
getting fleshed out that way too.
It's different because I think Red Dead was such a story-focused game, such a narrative-focused game, that it felt like a real living world where the NPCs had their own lives. I think this isn't really on that level because all the NPCs are generally there just to kill you, so they're kind of just standing around waiting for you to show up. But the variety of enemies in this game, the variety of locations keeps it super interesting. They don't, like a lot of games, you'll just get, again, Far Cry, copy-pasted bandits. You're going to be fighting the same people over and over and over. This game, the amount of different enemies, different common enemies, different bosses, it's insane. It's really something.
I will say on the NPC side, Souls games are notorious for having convoluted NPC side quests that pretty much everybody can miss all of them if you're not looking for them. And even
Why
me,
wasn't the right covenant, Mike?
right?
Like,
Yeah.
yep.
So I played for about 60 hours before I encountered and completed started. I haven't completed, but started an NPC side quest that I assume you were supposed to run into within the first 10 hours.
Wow.
So I ended up finding a really early game NPC quest line 60 hours in, and then just started it. I'm like, I totally missed this, and I'm still trying to finish it. And there's other quest lines in the Round Table Hold. That's kind of your home base. Like, there are NPC quest lines, but nobody tells you how to start them or what the circumstances are to do it.
There are.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you don't
have to
talk to
stumble
a
upon
certain
it.
NPC before beating a boss, you can lose that quest line forever.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've lost a couple, actually, and I'll have to do a second playthrough. So
Yeah, and you're
how it
even
goes.
watching me the other day, and I was doing one. You're like, oh, I missed all of that, and I already beat that boss that's at the end of that quest line. So you missed a bunch of NPC dialogue and stuff.
I only had the bread of the sandwich. I missed all the meat and cheese and
Yeah.
lettuce. I just had the beginning and close. I didn't know there was other character interactions. Yeah.
But at the same time, you can still play through this game and miss some of those quests and still,
Yeah.
get a complete experience. But it's like you're gonna want to, like, as soon as I beat this game, I'm gonna want to start a new game. Not even New Game Plus. I'm gonna want to do a completely different build because I'm interested to try out like the magic, and I know I'm gonna run into stuff that I missed the first time.
Yeah, and with the NPCs too, in every Souls game, a lot of them are tied to potential build styles. Like there'll be a sorcerer NPC quest line. There'll be an assassin NPC. So like if you want to get certain high level spells and stuff, you'll need to find those particular NPCs and be sure you don't miss their quest lines the next time you kind of go through the game. So everything has a purpose, nothing superfluous, and it's really well intentioned, and it's the greatest hits of FromSoftware's catalog. So
Yeah.
with that said, maybe it's time to go to our final thoughts. Head to the round table hold one last time. Let's chat it up. Elden Ring, Tarnished.
We're back. Now, we didn't say up top, Joe is dead, but we just ran over and picked up his runes, so we should be doing good, and we're
I think
about
we'll be able to
put
summon him
together-
for next week. Yep.
That's right. When we finally complete the Elden Ring and
Mhm.
become Elden Lords, little Lord Elden boys, as we
Mhm.
plan
One
to
day.
do. We're here talking our final thoughts on Elden Ring.
Yeah. So this game, it's funny. We've spent over an hour discussing it, and it's like we really haven't talked about it. Like the plot. What is it?
Around.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
kind of far in the game, but I kind of know. Like you'll figure it out yourself, listeners, when you play it. But it's like,
Oh,
I don't know. What's it
on that
about?
note, I've watched Jacob so many times who's like, oh, I think this is a story boss. I don't really know what's going on. Hold on, I gotta beat this guy.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
And maybe that's
Well,
your
similar to-
character's journey. He just has no clue of the world around him, and he just walks forward and kills, and that's his story, and that's all
I
you'll get out of it. But it's still pretty badass.
And obviously FromSoft known for kind of their vague story. They don't, again, they don't hold your hand with gameplay. They don't hold your hand with story. Bloodborne, I could not tell you what was going on in that game at any point in time. This
about the
game,
devil.
I've got a basic understanding of like who different characters are and how they relate, but I'm still like, what's going on? Two
What's
fingers?
the core plot?
Like, what?
What's the conflict? I don't really
Yeah.
know. Yeah. But you'll figure it out. Leave it to
great.
Vadividya. If you're a fan of Souls, you know Vadividya. He'll
Course.
figure it out for us. Prepare to cry.
The lore master. Yeah.
The lore master himself. But yeah, so we've spent an hour. I'm at 60 hours. I see this as my initial, I'll probably play this first playthrough for 200 hours. Just see all that I can see. And then
Yeah.
I'll start getting into, challenge runs and things like that. But I guess for final thoughts, first of all, the Berserk sword, the Guts sword in this game is probably the best it's ever been. Demon Souls has been an influence on, Berserk has been an influence on the Souls series since Demon Souls, very clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sadly Miura passed away last year, and I have to think that making the Guts sword so good in this game is intentional, and they even redesigned it graphically to look more like it.
And there's even a sort of a
yeah.
monument to him with the sword sticking out of the ground, which is another reference to Berserk, right?
Yes, yeah, and so again, Miyazaki is influenced by many things. One of them being Berserk, other ones being Western fantasy, and he would read books that were above his reading level, and he didn't understand it completely. So that's why he likes to tell stories that you got to fill in the blanks and things like that. And so this is just doing all of that on a grand scale. And,
Yeah.
you know, Demon Souls is my favorite. That doesn't mean it's the best, but it has the strongest atmosphere. And the way they've designed this open world, it feels like the atmosphere is just as dense as it was in the original Demon Souls, just times 1,000, you know?
Yeah.
And I think they hit it out of the park. It's a masterpiece. It's the most accessible one. The variety of player expression has never been higher because it's Bloodborne, it's Sekiro, it's Dark Souls 3, 2, Demon Souls. It's a greatest hits album. And they're playing all of the hits and none of the duds, in my opinion. Quality of life is improved. You can teleport right from the gate. There's no long boss runs. You know, usually you get a checkpoint right outside a boss door. Any of the friction is removed. And if you want it to be harder, you can easily add friction for yourself. I think it's a perfect blend and balance for newcomers and veterans alike. 10 out of 10. Game of the year. Check it out.
Wow.
Don't be intimidated. It's game of the year already. I'm predicting it now.
No, I have
we
to.
are later.
Yeah, I mean, I have to totally agree with you, Mike. I mean, not to hammer this point home too much, but really, I think the biggest success of this game was keeping that difficulty, keeping what made the Dark Souls games great, but making it more accessible. And the translation to open world, people were worried about it. It's you know, a complete success. And you know, what can we really say? I wanted to point out, so you know, the other big game to come out recently was Horizon Forbidden West, right? Which is a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn, which I've played a little bit of as well. And that is much more, both these games very well reviewed. This game, you know, Horizon has great graphics, apparently, you know, a good story and all that, but it follows that same, you know, Ubisoft format, checkpoints everywhere.
World, yeah.
Yeah. And so the comparison between these two games is quite, you know, stark. And pretty much, I mean, this, again, might be selection bias, but all my friends are playing Elden Ring right now. I don't know anyone who's playing Horizon Forbidden West, not to say that it's not a good game in its own right, but I just think that shows you how successful this game has been. Game of the year, of course. I have to agree. This will be looked at as a classic for years. 20 years from now, people are saying, you know, how people look at, you know, whatever classic you want to say from the 90s or 2000s, like this will
Final
be
Fantasy
a game that's remembered.
Ocarina of Time. It's up there. It's just
it's an all-timer, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Colin, after watching this, do you agree with that assessment or do you disagree?
I mean, that's just astounding. My opinion's not really going to matter till I get my hands on it.
Yeah, you got to feel it.
I mean, it's just, watching
Try
you guys
two-handing.
has been endlessly fun. I'm going to two-hand my controller here.
Right.
I'm just so impressed with how articulately you guys put just what makes it so exciting. And I knew it just picking up the vibe from watching you guys and experiencing it visually, but no, it is so much more, it sounds like, when you get your hands on it.
And you can only really experience so much from watching it, like any game.
Feel it, yeah.
And I asked earlier, would this game be allowed to be as hard if it was just a new game? I guess what the underlying question I was getting for was, do you think this will inspire open world games to be like this, to be, I guess, quote unquote, like real world games, or whatever even you would want to apply this new world of just like realistic detachment, right? To allow you to actually explore these exploratory open world games.
Kind of hands-off
I really
open
hope so.
world.
I don't think so. I
don't think so?
Because of you just literally reminding me of Zero Dawn, I just think that there is such a built-in market of, and you see that argument all the time, Jacob. You said about the casual gamer thing, but you hear people be like, I paid $60, I get 1 hour a week where my wife's not yelling at me where I'm allowed to play a video game. Oh, why would I want to walk around, Elden Ring, and just get killed for an hour? That's not fun. That's not a game.
Yeah.
But it is. I mean, I live for the challenge. That's all it's ever going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got its core fan base, and I think this is already like the most played, the most bought FromSoftware game ever. It's their biggest success financially. And I think if you want to play a casual game, if you want to play Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, that niche has been filled. Like Ubisoft's not
Mm.
going to stop making games. Like they're going to make Far Cry 7, they're going to make Assassin's
Guarantee
Creed,
They're
Canada,
not
whatever
gonna
it
be
is.
that different either.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
going to keep that formula. There's plenty of games like that if you want that. If you want something different, Elden Ring is here, and I hope it does inspire other games to be a little bit different, try new things. I think it's a great direction for games, for open world games, and for all games to go into.
Yeah, and we see, there's a lot of the Souls-like genre has been spawned and things, like Shovel Knight or Hades is almost like a Souls-inspired roguelike. But I want to highlight kind of this journey that FromSoftware has gone through, and Hidetaka Miyazaki himself. He's 31 years old. He works for Oracle Systems doing like IT, and he wants to just get into gaming because he likes eco, and he's sick of his career. So he's 31 years old, gets a job at FromSoftware, does some middling stuff, finds out about a game they're going to cancel that's a Western fantasy game. He's like, I really like that stuff. I'm going to try to take it over. Takes it over, makes Demon Souls. Everyone thinks it's going to suck. The Sony head of marketing or whatever is like, this game is crap. No one's going to buy it. It's too hard. Becomes Game of the Year. Dark Souls comes out, changes everything. Smash hit. Dark Souls 2, 3, Bloodborne, Game of the Year, Sekiro. He becomes president of FromSoftware because of all of these bangers and changing the gaming landscape. He is now president of the company that he joined when he was 31 with no game development experience. And now to have made 10, 11 years later, what is potentially the best work the studio has ever done.
The culmination.
They just keep making hits. My question, where does it go from here? How does it get any better than this? I can't imagine it. They haven't dropped the ball. Knock on wood. When will they? How will they? And quickly, Battlefield unfinished. Halo unfinished. $60. I can play this for 5,000 hours, and it was the base price. Like they are showing you
Mike,
how it's done.
It's so refreshing to see this with FromSoftware, where people love The Witcher 3, one of the best games of its era.
Yeah.
CD Projekt Red had a great reputation. Cyberpunk 2077 was hugely hyped, similar to how Elden Ring was hyped. People were looking forward to it. It came out. We all know what happened. So it's just great to. It's just great. And their reputation obviously has not recovered.
You can't rebuild that trust.
Yeah, and it's good to see FromSoft actually living up to the hype and Elden Ring. This is the game that people needed. Lots going on in the world. People needed.
People are sad. They want a nice, happy game to escape from it all.
Something to put your energy into. Now, Mike, to your question, because it is a fascinating question about where we go from
where do we go?
Now, I said culmination. It is. You love to see a company learn from every game they've made to, okay, that and the next one we'll refine.
This is their stadium tour.
And jumping from the action-adventure genre, I guess, to open world now, do they keep going genre-wise? Is the next step... I don't even know if these are popular anymore, but given their social interest, is it an MMO? Is it, is it just... Do they make the biggest game ever? I don't know.
I think they could either go back to... They can make another Dark Souls... They could make Bloodborne 2. A lot of people have been asking for that for a long time.
Yeah.
Or they could try, who knows? They might make Elden Ring 2. They might do something totally different. I have no idea where they're gonna go from here. Yeah,
they've always kind of just done whatever the hell they want, and a lot of people, they consider Bloodborne the best, and it's hard. It's an individual preference thing, but a lot of people do want that Bloodborne sequel. Maybe it will, because you do something this big. It's like an actor, I'm doing a Marvel movie. Now let me just go do kind of an independent feature, do a little artsy
second
thing.
chapter to a book even. It's something I know.
Yeah, like this
I do think,
around.
I think probably for the next game, I'm imagining it'll be something smaller scope-wise, because Elden Ring also took so long in development. I mean, it's a huge game, so detailed. Obviously, it took a really, really long time to perfect. And I'm glad that they took all the time they needed and didn't release an unfinished product, which so many game studios do. But I think a smaller game in the future, they might go back to that next.
Now, to that point, though, Jacob, if we're even just staying on this game, Elden Ring 1, is the next step patches? Is it DLC? Do you see something like that coming for this?
Yeah, there probably might be DLC. Performance-wise, there are, people have had some issues with like frame rate and that kind of thing,
On
but
PC
compared
specifically,
to
it's been a little rough.
yeah, but compared to most like AAA games that come out these days, like it's released in such a good state. I mean, look
Very
at
successful.
Halo, look at Cyberpunk. Like these games don't come out without bugs anymore, but this
No.
game seems to have. So
Yeah.
it's insane.
It's literally the type of game they're making, the type of challenge they're presenting the player with, and even just releasing it finished is a throwback to a bygone era. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like no one
Wow.
completes
They don't do
their
that
games
anymore,
anymore.
yeah.
So the
No.
Wow.
integrity of Miyazaki and FromSoft, and now under his leadership, it's just going to come down to who do you groom to be the lead designer? If you're not getting in the trenches designing, how do you maintain that quality? I'm sure he'll figure it out because so far so good. Again, knock on wood. And it's just good to have a finished game. There will be patches, especially on the PvP side. There's some builds that are just blatantly broken and like you need to tweak some damage modifiers. Every Souls game had those kind of patches with balancing for PvP. So we'll get there, but DLC could be coming. Dark Souls 2, the best content in the game was the 3 DLCs. So
Right.
they've
I
all
would
had
say-
DLC except Demon Souls, I believe.
Yeah, I would say for 3 too. Now, Mike, if he's really open to working with collaborators like George R.R., who is the developer who did like Ico and Shadow of the Colossus?
I can't I can't remember the official, but that's the guy who inspired him to get.
That's
into
funny
games.
that you mentioned
see
Shadow of the
them
Colossus.
come
I'll look it up.
together because that's a
Yeah.
game that's a lot like Elden Ring, where it's very sparse in its language, quote unquote, or how it
Yeah.
communicates to you, but also
Well, they even have
rich
these,
and gigantic.
They have these things in Elden Ring called walking mausoleums.
Mausoleums, yeah.
Yeah, they're these giant things
Very
with a
scary.
bell on them that rings as they're walking, and it literally reminded me of Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, you have to like climb up on him. And it's Team Ico, and the main guy we want to deal with is Fumito Ueda. So
I
that's what
would like to see them coming together.
that's a perfect
Definitely
match.
some inspiration there. Yeah.
That's what inspired him to get into gaming. It was the game Eco.
Yeah.
He's like, you can tell
Wow.
stories like
Hero.
this. I want to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's the collab we need. Team Eco from Software. That's it. That's the only
Incredible.
answer I have. Even
All I
riding
can
a
say
horse
is-
feels like Colossus. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. All I want to say is everyone go buy this game, support this game as much as
Jeez.
possible. Give them a financial incentive and say for other game studios to be like, wow, this game's doing really good. We should try something like
We
that.
should actually try to finish our product and
Yeah.
launch something worth paying for.
Well, we
Right.
should release more chips for more PlayStations so that maybe Colin could play one too, or maybe not
No,
have
no,
some
no.
license issues.
You need to
Maybe
invade
one
another
day.
player, defeat them, and then take their PlayStation. That's the only way
Yes,
you
I
should
do.
go at this point. But
You
yeah,
are defeated.
yeah, call them a foul tarnish, Snuff out the flame of their ambition. The first boss in the game, I won't say the name of it, but literally when you die, it's like, put these foolish ambitions aside. Like, stop trying,
Oh,
you
wow,
suck.
that's some smack
They're
talk.
literally beating you down with the first boss,
Go
even
get good.
psychologically.
Give
yeah.
up.
Give
And a lot
up.
of people have said the first main story boss in this game is one of the most hard, like, it's like a mid-level Dark Souls boss. Like, it's not an easy, like, it's
Love
definitely a level gate to, like, it's a difficulty check to be like, if you're actually good enough to move past this part of the game.
Mm-hmm. And he reminds you constantly when you fail.
Yeah.
To just give it up, man. But never do it. Never give up. Dark Souls is about
Never
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 give up.
surrender.
Elden Ring, you can do this. Believe in yourself. And why do we get knocked down, Master Wayne? To throw back to our Batman episode. Get back
You're
up.
not my
again,
dad,
man.
Alfred.
Oh,
You're not my
jeez.
dad, you never will be.
I'm gonna go brood. Batman probably loves these games.
He would because he's a brooding little boy. But we're brooding little men, and
right.
all our listeners, like Jacob said, buy this game. We want to know if you're playing it. You can hit us up at normies_like_us and be like, yo, that bleep boss was so hard. And when I went down to bleep, we'll love that. It'll be very exciting. And of course, like, subscribe, share, check us out on the YouTube page. Please, it helps us out, truly.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on this very specific yet very vague discussion on Elden Ring. Weirdly,
It's
you
a
can
serious
do that.
quest with, of course, your hosts, Colin Souls 3.
Mike at Fell Omen.
And this is Jacob, the loathsome dung eater.
Oh, gross.
Invade you next time, Normies.
Ooh, bye.
Bye.
Bye.